I'm Ben Ryman, and this is Behaviour Speak. Hey everybody, welcome to this special episode of Behaviour Speak, where we speak with the inspiring Jaime Santana, founder of Santana Behavioural Services in Toronto. Join us as Jaime shares his journey as a dedicated behavior analyst, exploring the challenges and triumphs of working with adults with developmental disabilities. Discover how Jaime's passion for empowering change and building independence has shaped his approach to applied behavior analysis, particularly through the use of acceptance and commitment training. Plus, get a sneak peek into the upcoming ONTABA 2025 conference. I'll be attending as the official podcaster, and I'll be interviewing attendees, speakers, organizers, as well as moderating a panel in my first live interview on Behaviour Speak. Listeners can get 10% off registration by going to Behaviour Live and using the code BXSpeak10. Can't wait to see you there. All right, welcome to Behaviour Speak, Jaime.
Thanks for having me. Super excited to be here and to chat with you for the next little bit.
I'm stoked. Before we get started, I want to acknowledge I'm producing this podcast on the territories of the Klamath, Clayus, Somoko, Comox, and Seashell First Nations. As always, I'm grateful to be here. All right, Jaime, tell me a little bit about yourself.
All right. Like everybody, we kind of fell into ABA by accident. So a little bit of background. We'll start from there. I'm a registered behavior analyst in the BCBA in the Toronto area. I've been working with youth and adults with developmental disabilities for most of my career, and I run a clinic. Originally, the plan was not to be a behavior analyst, like for most people. Originally, I wanted to be a lawyer. That was my goal, where I was studying towards, and I was kind of on that path. And then I had a daughter in third year university, so close to finishing my undergrad, and then obviously that wasn't going to be feasible. So I was doing a placement in my fourth year seminar. I was working with a third grader who was having a hard time in school, social skills, academics, all of that fun stuff. In that placement, I hadn't really known anything about ABA, but I was doing this developmental psychology and abnormal psychology coursework because that was my graduate degree in psychology, and started learning about token systems and things like that. So I did some really rough independent token systems presented for my class. Saw the change, saw the student really looking forward to the days that I was there. And I thought, you know what? This is something that I could pursue, but I didn't know what that something was. I had no idea what that something was. And then a classmate within that class was like, have you heard about the Masters in Applied Disability Studies with a focus in ABA at Brock University? And I was like, no, I have no idea what that is. So started looking into it, started trying to learn what it was. I mean, I had heard of Skinner. I had heard of, the behaviorists that kind of shaped ABA through my psych coursework, but I had no idea how ABA worked, what the concept of ABA was. So I applied to the M.ADS program. And part of the application was remembering how difficult it was for me to engage with people when I moved to Canada when I was a kid. Right? Had that communication barrier. Didn't speak the language. Didn't understand the language. Everything was brand new when I was attending the school that, except for my Spanish teacher, nobody spoke the language I spoke. So it was a big barrier. And that became exciting to me because I started doing more research, and I was like, okay, so, help with communication, help with social skills, help with inclusion. That got really exciting. So I got super excited to apply for it. And it was the only thing I applied to post-grad. It was the only program. I applied to nothing else. And luckily I got in. And after my first week, I remember immediately falling in love with ABA, immediately falling in love with the concept of ABA, falling in love with helping people, falling in love with building skills, falling in love with building independence, all of that. And I was all in. I did a couple placements through my coursework, worked with kids, little ones, and worked with adults. I started with the little ones because that's what almost everybody in my program was doing, right? Most everybody works within the autism sector. Most everybody works with little ones that they're working in ABA. And through my placement, I realized that I didn't have enough energy to work with kids for full time because it takes a lot of energy and it takes a special kind of person to be so playful, so active, so up the entire time. I quickly realized that was not for me. with the little ones. So then I started, working with this company, Shining Through, in the Toronto area. I was hired to work in their adult program, and I fell in love even more with the sides of ABA because I was working with people who were different, doing different programming than the little ones, who required less energy, who I could engage in differently. And I also started working with clients with severe challenging behavior. And I can't ever forget the one client that made me realize that this is where I wanted to be, right?
Mm.
Working with a client, severe self-injury, had to wear all types of protection, face consistently bruised.
Mm.
It was super severe. And that was one of my first cases. And I was like, you know, totally scared, totally new to the field, had some great supervision, had some great training, had some great support. But of course, it's really easy to feel inadequate when you're so new with all of that, right? But then we started to see some change as a team. Bruising went away, the communication went up, the inclusion started to happen. We're able to go out into the community. And that was the point where I was like, these are the people that need support. These are the people that I want to work with. And that's kind of where my passion for working with people with severe challenging behavior started. And that's kind of where I'm going now. It's kind of what I'm doing. That's what I'm focusing mostly on. Doing some other stuff, some other cool things, which I know we'll talk about in a little bit, but that's kind of what I'm really passionate about. And then in 2017, I became a BCBA. So I've been a BCBA since then. Through there, I learned about precision teaching and standard acceleration charts. So I started nerding up.
Mm.
I started having a lot of fun with that, started doing a lot of that. My entire practice centers around precision teaching and the standard acceleration chart. Then I learned about ACT. I did the ACT boot camp, fell in love with that. That took me off to RFT. So I started learning about RFT, doing some RFT language acquisition stuff and approaching interventions through an RFT lens as well. So that's been really fun. And all of that has kind of brought me to where I am today.
Do you have a credential with the International Behavior Analysis Organization, the Qualified Applied Behavior Analysis Credentialing Board, the Behavior Analyst Certification Board, or would like a certificate of attendance for another organization? You can earn continuing education units by going to www.behaviorspeak.com, clicking on CEUs, and entering the 3 secret words. The first secret word is Ontario. Okay, that's quite a story. So there's a lot of spots I want to unpack in there. So first, kind of going back pre-BCBA, working for this first company with adults. First, just give me a timeline. So what year are we talking about?
So I started my M.ADS in 2015. That's when I started my M.ADS. 2016, I was already employed with the company. So I started September 2015. By May 2016, I was working in the field. I'd finished my second semester. I'd finished 2 placements. And I'm already working and shining through with adults. So that's kind of where I've been.
And so what was the kind of the context of shining through, and sort of how old were these folks? What was sort of the environment you're working in there?
So it's a clinic, and it's a really interesting place because when I started working there, it was a Victorian home that was remodeled to be a center. So
Wow.
it was 4 stories, right? 3 stories plus a basement, and they serviced clients across the lifespan at that point. So they had an IBI wing, I guess you could call it, or an IBI program. They also had this Learn to Live program, which is what I worked, and that focused on adults. Their program was on, building independence, building job readiness skills, building community safety skills, building all of those things that you need to be to have to be an independent adult, or as independent as you could possibly be. So that's kind of where I started to fall in love with the sector, with the population that I'm currently working.
Right. And then these adults, so this was sort of was this sort of a day service, and then the adults lived at home or lived in other places? Did some live in residential programs? Was it that sort of thing?
I had a couple clients there that lived in residential care. So they'd come from the residences to the center, but most did live with their families. It was definitely a day program. It was definitely a place where we, worked for the day. It was mostly group based. So it was like 2 to 1. Severe cases were 1 to 1, but it was like 2 to 1.
Yeah.
2 clients per 1 staff, etc. And yeah, it was, they get there at 9, they leave at 3:45. We do a bunch of community related stuff. They had a kitchen, so we worked on cooking, all that stuff. So it was a really interesting, different program.
And this individual you were supporting with that had the severe self-injury, were they living at home, and there's someone that kind of came to this program? I mean, I'm just sort of curious about sort of how you came into contact with someone with such severe problem behavior, in the context of a day service.
Yeah. So, I mean, the program that we had was focused, it was ABA programming, right? But targeted to
Okay.
adults. The client was living in a residential home, and they came with the resident staff. And,
Got it.
that's where I kind of started also to work in collaboration with residents,
Mm-hmm.
employees, resident staff support workers. They would come in, they would see what we were doing once we started seeing success. They would come in, they would see what we were doing and try to replicate what they were doing over there in the home. I remember this client was driving like an hour and a half to come to our program because there was nowhere else for the client to go.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So they were coming in, we would work with them, we would support them. Our BCBA was going to the home where he lived and supporting them as well, doing some consultation with them. So that's kind of how it happened. There was nowhere else for this client to go. They came to us, we did some work, and then they went off to continue with their life.
Yeah, yeah. And so I'm trying to get a sort of a picture of residential programs, group homes, that sort of thing in Ontario. As you know, I'm out in British Columbia, and I think things are a little different out here. I'm curious, sort of what sort of the system is in Ontario for group homes, kind of how are they funded, that kind of thing, and then sort of how long has, because I think in our neck of the woods, ABA Behavior Analysis Services in the context of sort of adult services is relatively new. And so I'm sort of trying to get an idea of kind of how long have these programs been, providing behavioral services, where I think for years it was more kind of crisis intervention and, trial and error and that sort of thing. So trying to get a picture of those services in Ontario.
Yeah, I mean, like with any other, like in any other province, group homes vary.
Yeah.
They're very different. The biggest problem, like in your provinces, is always funding, lack of support,
Mm-hmm.
lack of resources,
Mm-hmm.
all of that stuff. Staff still try their best, but there's still that one barrier, right? And because they are regulated by the government, group home supported living, they're regulated. They require licenses to run. All of that stuff is happening. They have a little bit more control. However, again, funding is scarce. When it comes to behavior analysts being involved, that's also relatively new in Ontario. I'm going to say about a decade that we've been
Okay.
involved, and it's a requirement now. So if a client has a behavior plan or they have behavior challenging needs, behavior analyst, a registered behavior analyst, needs to be involved, needs to be part of that process.
Wow.
And it's been like that for a while. BCBAs have been involved in group homes for a little bit now as well, right? Because there is those barriers, staffing has always become difficult. And I think most group homes across jurisdictions have had that. There's always big turnover. There's, especially in homes with residents who have high levels of challenging behavior or barrier behavior, right? It's easy to burn out. You don't have the resources you need. But through my company, we've been able to collaborate with a couple of group homes, and we've been able to kind of continue to expand the work we're doing and provide ABA in a different approach, I guess, than most residences or residents are used to. And we've seen a little bit of change with that.
Okay, let's come to that. So tell me, you mentioned your company. Tell me a little bit about your company and what it's called and sort of how that all got started. And then we'll kind of talk about the work you're doing in group homes.
Yeah, absolutely. So I funded Santana Behavioural Services in 2021. So I was working with Shining Through. I had been there for 5 years and I had seen the same clients for the same amount of time. And it got to the point where it kind of felt like I had hit a limit, right? We weren't moving clients through. Clients were kind of there. I wasn't learning. I wasn't evolving. And I'm the type of guy that needs to continue to grow and evolve. I decided to go independent. So in 2021, I started Santana Behavioural Services by myself, providing consultation, right, to other behavior analysts, to organizations, etc. I was doing BACB supervision for folks who needed it, providing direct services myself in home. I was doing a lot of parent coaching, and that one became one of my passions within the program. And now anybody that kind of comes through our doors and wants to access our services, part of the ask is like, you need to do parent coaching because we only see your family members, your loved ones, the person you're providing care for a really limited time of the day. The rest of the time they're with their caregiver, right? So we want to build the skills for caregivers, especially because we get a lot of severe challenging behavior cases coming.
Mm-hmm.
We want to empower parents and caregivers, and we want to give them the tools they need to feel comfortable managing those things, to do so successfully, and to, feel like not everything is lost. Because I hear that a lot, right? When you have a mom, for example, whose kid is 18, is now 6'3", 230 pounds, and mom's like 5'2", right? There's a lot of fear, and there's a lot, I don't know what to do. I can't handle this. So we really want to empower those parents who feel like they can't do anything to be able to effectively work with their loved ones, right? And to
Mm-hmm.
rebuild that connection, and to rebuild the trust in their family home so that they can all feel safe. And because of that, uh, I started to realize that there wasn't a lot of services for kids over the age of 13, right? Youth and adults. There's not a lot. I think that's across the board when it comes to ABA. There's little pockets here and there, but there wasn't like a lot of access. Because I also like to work with that population. It was 13 and up that we were working in. And I worked with clients across the spectrum with various developmental disabilities, severe challenging behavior, for sure. That remains one of my passions. But then when I started dabbling with ACT and RFT, it also turned to clients with higher skills and whose needs weren't as severe, whose needs maybe were like executive functioning, lack of attention, the behaviors that people would qualify as like anxiety. So I've been working a lot of that over the last 3 to 4 years and providing skills to manage that. And we've kind of developed this program that focuses on behavior reduction while building a lot of important skills, communication, all the basics, right? But we also really focus on community safety and job readiness skills. So because we serve clients with various skill levels, we have a really kind of fluid program that adapts really well, and we have a lot of opportunities to work in the community or to stay in center or to do any of that to kind of meet the needs of the client.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of why we started. And last year, actually, last September, we opened up our clinic. And that was the first time we had a brick and mortar place for clients to come in. We have a really good team that we've been building for the last year, coming from different walks of life with different experiences. Our RBAs, there's 4 of us. We have almost 100 years of experience combined. And really building, we have a lot of this experience that's working. Our supervised therapists, very new to the field, right? Just graduated from college or university or still in school for it, to a few years of experience, both college and university degrees in ABA. And our program is really driven by our values. All of our interventions are driven by our company values. And, when I interview folks, especially after getting into ACT, values became super important. So when I interview folks, I tell them very clearly, like, these are our values and this is what you need to be part of your values as well to be part of our team and to fit in kind of a thing for our clients. Our values are acceptance, community, and independence, right? As well as development. And I always highlight development at the end, because not only do I want to develop skills in my clients, not only do we want to develop independence with our clients, but I always tell my team, like, I need you to be driven to develop your own skills. I need you to be driven to always do a little bit better every day, whether it's for your clients, for yourself, for your communities. So that's kind of what's been driving our services over the last year.
Tell me about, I love that sort of that values-based approach and applying that in hiring. The other two I think are pretty clear. Tell me about where acceptance kind of falls in as a value for your company.
So that's an interesting one, right? Because everybody's like, yeah, I get it. Community, great. And when people, independence, awesome. Acceptance really comes from multiple streams. One, accepting people for who they are, right? Not wanting to change people for the want to change people because it's easier for us. It's accepting people for who they are and building their skills based on who they are. So what's important to them? That's one piece of acceptance. The second piece of acceptance is understanding that you may make mistakes when you're in chair. You may do the wrong thing when you're in chair. You may not apply feedback the way we want you to apply it. That doesn't mean you're a horrible interventionist. That doesn't mean you're not good at your job. Accepting that for what it is, a mistake, an opportunity for growth, an opportunity for development, and taking that acceptance and those mistakes as, this is something where I can do better, continuing to build your skills, making sure that next time you clarify the feedback that you've been given. And I'm the same way, right? And I tell my RBAs the same thing. We may not get every intervention right away. right? Nobody can. I don't think any behavior analyst can get that
Mm-hmm.
right away.
Mm-hmm.
And our job is not to get it right away. Our job is to try our best, accept when we make those mistakes, accept when we are not at our best, and
Mm.
work through that effectively.
I love that. I love that. Okay, tell me a little bit more about, because I think one of the barriers to sort of having more RBAs in Ontario, BCBs, other places, working with adults, I think, is funding. It tends to be in every province, probably every state. The kids under 6, there seems to be more dollars available for them than folks over 6. And certainly once folks turn 19, those drop substantially again. Unless, of course, there are extremely severe, challenging behavior, then for some of those folks, for some reason, they're getting the most money they've ever gotten, in those cases, which is, interesting, separate conversation, I think, as well, around how governments spend their money. But what does funding look like for services, for the work you're doing, and sort of, are you able to pay your folks like a competitive enough wage that they want to stay there, or is it more that these folks kind of have the passion like you do for working with that 13 and up population, understand that they might not make the many figure salary that those working with young kids might make? What does that all look like for your folks?
That's a really hard question to answer because
Yeah.
you're right. After a certain age, there's no more funding. I think Ontario is one of the only provinces that actually provides funding up to the age of 18 through the Ontario Autism Program. But that's only for people who have autism, who have a diagnosis
Right.
of autism.
Right.
And even with that, right? As you progress in age, the older you get, the less funding you get. So it's like if you
Mm-hmm.
turn, you may have your max funding set at $40,000 when you're 5 for the
Mm-hmm.
year. But as soon as you turn 6, that's going to immediately be cut to like 35. So it's like $5,000 worth of needs have changed just because your birthday.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
we've been advocating for a lot of that change. After the age of 18, there really isn't a lot of funding for ABA,
Mm-hmm.
right? So it becomes this um, balancing act for families of how much can I give and how we can be the most effective within those time frames, or within that budget for the family. A lot of it is private pay, unless they're severe clients who get emergency funding through other government resources that can
Right.
then cover our services.
Right.
But that's really time consuming. It takes, to get that process and get those emergency funds. They're not quite emergency funds because they take like a year plus to come through and to go through the entire process.
Mm.
When it comes to paying our staff, I'm really committed to ensuring people are able to live with the job that they're doing.
Yeah.
The payment that we have, the very minimum payment that we have is Toronto is one of the most expensive cities in the world,
Well, this is what I was thinking
right?
about. Yeah.
And I have staff that live in downtown Toronto, which is the most expensive pocket of Toronto, right? So what I've done is really kind of put people over profit. And that's been one of my driving forces from the beginning, right? If I'm making a profit, great, right? I want to make sure I'm paying all the bills. I want to make sure all of that is happening. And if I'm making a profit, great. But if I'm not being impactful with my clients, I'm not being successful. If our company isn't being impactful to our clients, we're not being successful. If my staff are having a hard time paying their bills and living their day-to-day life, we're not being successful. So I've really focused on paying a little percentage over living wage in Toronto. So we're not paying minimum wage. We're not paying really low salaries. We're trying to stay competitive. I cannot compete with the big organizations, right? The big
Mm-hmm.
organizations who are paying $80,000 a year for direct support implementers. I can't compete with.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So what we try to do is incentivize with other things. We're a smaller team, which means you get more supervision, more skill development from your RBA directly. Our
Mm.
caseloads are a little bit lighter. We provide training opportunities. For our RBAs, we have in-house CEUs that we provide, right? We're a CEU provider. So we're able to put that together, provide them to our members. I try to get them out to conferences. I try to get them out, give them opportunities that excite people. So
Mm.
we have done one presentation at a conference not too long ago, and that was for my team, for my RBAs to excited about to share the work that they're doing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We partnered with a government agency providing a summer camp and supported their staff with ABA training. And I put all of my RBAs in that project because I wanted them to get excited. I wanted them to be part of this training opportunity to build their skills. If they need any supervision from anything, I'm happy to explore that. So where I can't make up financially, I try to make up educationally. I try to make up as part of a team, lunches, whatever it is that we can do to provide reinforcers to our people. I think sometimes as behavior analysts, we're really good at delivering reinforcement with our clients,
Yeah.
but we withhold so much reinforcers from our staff and forget that, even us, we also need reinforcers and our reinforcers are different, right? And it's really good to kind of assess what each individual's reinforcers are that are part of your team and then try to make those available as much as possible.
I love that. I love that. Yeah, really cool. Sounds like a great company to work for.
Try our best.
Yeah. If I was in a different stage of life and still living in Ontario, I'd be looking you up 100%. Let's
You
talk
ever feel
about yeah. So let's go back to kind of your how you said how your approach is a little different in the group home context with the folks that have those severe behaviors. Tell me about what that looks like. What's your approach and how, sort of what's the start to end sort of timeline and
Yeah,
process?
so there was a new group home that I consulted with group homes since I started. At clients transitioning into group homes, etc. But those were kind of short-term based, transitional, whatever. But there was a new group home company that opened up last year in Ontario, and they reached out to us asking for consultation and to be the consultants for them to support the behavior plan development, all of that training for their staff. I thought it was a really good opportunity to get that started. So we did. We did. And throughout the whole process, we've like as a company, we applied the skills-based treatment, Dr. Hanley's My Way model, whatever you want to call it. We've applied that with our clients. And when this opportunity came, I immediately thought, what if we do a similar adapted model following the UniPro, the Universal Protocol, following this, different approach to ABA or the different way of applying ABA where it's not compliance based,
Hmm.
but more cooperation based. What if we do that in group homes?
Hmm.
And we've been doing that. We've been doing that for clients with severe challenging behavior. And I'm going to have to give a shout out to my RBA, Catherine Jesso, who's been doing a lot of that work. And we've worked with clients who have severe self-injury. We've worked with clients who have, who engage in really dangerous behaviors to access what they wanted.
Hmm.
For example, we had a client who would cut her skin, thighs, wrists, etc., multiple times a day. And over the last year, we were able to really decrease that. We were able to increase communication. She's reaching out for support when they feel like they're going to be engaging in self-injury and applying some of that ACT process to like understand that your thoughts aren't you and your thoughts
Hmm.
aren't true and separating yourself from those. We've had clients who wanted to smoke marijuana or drink alcohol and would put themselves in these really dangerous situations to get access to that
Hmm.
because in other group home placements, they weren't able to access that at all. It was against the rules.
Right.
We created for safety situations where we're not giving them access to this, right? We're not going to give you the alcohol. We're not going to give you the marijuana, but we're going to give you a safe space for you to engage in this if you can get it yourself,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
So, it's a safe space. It's off property, following all the laws type of stuff. But at least you know that if they're going to engage in this behavior, which they're going to anyways, right? They're not going under a bridge with a bunch of random
Hmm.
people putting themselves in really dangerous situations to access, but they're accessing it safely in a way that we can somewhat control it. We've been doing a lot of that. And what we also have been doing is um, we've been doing a lot of staff training, right? And we've implementing a lot of ACT with staff training. And what we've seen with that uh, is a decrease in turnover, right? They have not had turnover in large amounts in the last year and a half since we started working with.
Wow.
They have had to add people, but the original people that because they've expanded, but the original people that started with the company are for the most part still there. We had the opportunity to help them build a different approach from really early on, and it's been successful. We've seen that change happen. Now, we had to work really hard to get buy-in. A lot of these folks came in from this compliance based model, which I think a lot of places use. And I think a lot of places are switching gears on that as well, right? Um, a lot of them came from this compliance based model where they're like, what do you mean we're not having the question we got was, what do you mean we're not having consequences when they have challenging behavior?
Mm.
And our response is, no, we're still having consequences. We're just not taking away their preferred things, right?
Mm.
In the moment to make things worse or to escalate. So we really have to educate them as to like the side effects of punishment. We all know what those side effects are, right? Because if I put a hole
Mm-hmm.
in the wall right now and you tell me, you know what, you just lost car privileges and this actually happened, you just lost car privileges, you're like, okay, watch what else I can do. And now you have 10,
Mm-hmm.
right? The side effects of punishment are real and we know that they are. A lot of these folks don't have training in ABA and don't understand fully what those side effects are. So we have to really educate them in that. Really get the buy-in, really get in there with them. We weren't just telling them what to do. We got down and dirty with them. We were available. We shared our experiences. We showed them. We weren't just telling them what we wanted them to do. We weren't just telling them how they should change their reaction. We were doing it. We were showing them and they were seeing the difference. They were seeing how the client, instead of escalating further, were more willing to, take a little bit of a breath, take a chill pill, start to de-escalate, re-engage, and de-escalation started happening sooner, and we were able to see less escalations to begin with. They were less reactive to certain things. But we also created this, this model where it was really a two-way conversation. So they had really good opportunities to ask questions and answer our questions frequently, whether in person or virtually. And they also had the opportunity to share thoughts anonymously if they didn't feel comfortable asking in group meetings or
Mm.
one-to-ones. And then we would answer all those questions during our trainings or during general emails, etc. So that provided everybody with kind of the answers, the training, the support that they needed. And what we also found when we were doing the ACT training, that really helped us get in a lot of buy-in to what we were doing because we weren't just telling them what to do. We were asking them to do something that really aligned with their reinforcers. And that's what
Mm.
values are, right? If you're looking at what values are, it's just really following reinforcers and doing things that are reinforcing to the behaviors that you're engaging in. So when we started talking about values, we really started to see people engaging in those more value-driven behaviors and decision-making, as well as teaching them skills to manage those thoughts that pop in when things get hard and you're trying to chase values, right? So we've seen a lot of that be really successful with these folks.
Wow, amazing. And so what did some of that ACT training kind of look like?
So when we originally started with them and when we are, working with new crews that are coming in, we did the matrix, the ACT matrix. So we outlined the group values. We of course sprinkled in the company values, right? The company has their values. So we sprinkled in the company values. We asked what the group values are. And then we just kind of went around the matrix. For folks who don't know what the matrix is, it's a quadrant and it kind of aligns what your values are, any negative thoughts that kind of pop in when things get difficult and your values are kind of stressed or pushed, and then what behaviors you do to make yourself feel better in that moment when those thoughts come in that maybe take you a little further away from your values. So
Mm.
maybe raising your voice when a client's having a hard time.
Mm.
Maybe defaulting to punishment could be a value that pulls you away from, could be a behavior that pulls you away from your values when a client starts engaging, right? So we really start listing those out, not in a way to judge people, but in a way to like be like, this is what we always do. And we always start with giving our own examples. Like, these are the things that I can do to make myself feel better that are not necessarily better or getting me closer to my values, but in the moment feel better. And they're easy. Punishing people
Mm.
is easy. Taking things away
Mm.
from people is super easy, right?
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it could be reinforcing for the individual, as we know, because you take something away, they either stop what they're doing or things get worse. And when it stops what they're doing, it's a little reinforcing, right? So talk about those. And then from that last quadrant, we really want to talk about skill development goals for them. We want them to tell us what they want their practice to look like, what they want their days to look like, what they want their toolkit to look like. And then it's our job to help them build those. So that's kind of how we develop training. It's very fluent, it's very group specific, and it's very company specific. So that's kind of how we've been working through things. And when we get a new client, we'll go through those. When we get new staff, we'll work through those. When they're having a hard time for any specific reason, we're working through those. So we're really supporting staff in that way.
No, I love that. And that echoes some other conversations I've had on here around the ACT matrix. Just seems like a really kind of magical tool for working with group home staff in particular. It seems to really have changed the game for the approach to sort of both, I think, like you said, staff retention and staff buy-in. So it sounds like it's been a really powerful tool for you.
It has been, and even with our clients, right? We've been using that with clients, and the way I see it, it's another assessment.
And just going back to your, I want to ask you a little more questions about this sort of safe space sort of concept. I think that's a really cool idea. It kind of reminds me of, there's a lot of examples in BC around these sort of supervised injection sites for opioids
Mhm.
and those sorts of things to sort of create a space for folks to, versus going on the streets and, certainly risking overdose, but also the risk is of sort of using, dirty needles and those sorts of things, but also having a place where they can potentially access mental health supports and whatnot while doing things in a safe way. I'm curious if you could, that's sort of the image I have in my head. And I think when some folks that are listening think about that, they might sort of have that image in their head, but I don't. I'm guessing it's not exactly like that. I'm curious what this sort of safe space looks like and sort of how it's worked. Like what have been some of the outcomes of having that space in place? The second secret word is ABA 2025. ONTABA 2025.
So I'll give you a really easy example of what we did, right?
Yeah.
When we started with one specific client, it was last summer, still warm. They were smoking cigarettes. It was great,
Yeah.
no problem. Then winter started to creep in. Smoking in the house started to increase. There was lots of incident reports. There was lots of complaints about the house smelling like cigarette. And of course, that's a violation of the law in Ontario, right? Can't smoke indoors in Ontario in a public place.
Yeah.
So they were smoking indoors. They were smoking in the bathrooms. They were smoking in the rooms. They were smoking in the garages. They were smoking in the basements. And staff were like, we don't know what to do. We've hidden every lighter. We've taken away every cigarette. And I'm
Mm,
like, well, people are resourceful. If they want to
yeah.
smoke, they'll smoke, right?
Yeah.
Getting those cigarettes and they're getting those lighters one way or another. And they were like, well, we don't know what to do. And I was like, right, why don't we just ask the client to smoke outside? And we
Hmm.
did.
Hmm.
Can you go smoke outside? The response was, no, it's too cold. Of course, who
Hmm.
wants to go stand outside watching their videos, having cigarettes while it's freezing? So I said, why don't we provide them with a corner in the backyard of the home and we give them a heater? And Catherine was great at advocating for that. And they did. They put a little gazebo out there in the back corner. They put a cigarette dispenser or a cigarette bin, I guess, so they can throw their butts. And they gave one of those little standing gas heaters to be out.
Right. Yeah. Amazing.
And what we saw almost immediately was a decrease of smoking in the house, right? Because ultimately we are working with adults. And if adults want to smoke, adults deserve the right to smoke. Is it healthy for them? No. Is it good for them? No. But who are we to decide what they want to do with their life, right? So we want to
Sure.
we want to empower them to do what they want with their life, while also educating about the risks, harms,
Mm.
etc.
Hmm.
But we want to give them a safe opportunity to engage in things that, for whatever reason, they find are reinforcing to them. And by creating that safe space where it was warm, it wasn't uncomfortable, they could go out and continue to smoke if it was snowing because they were in a little covered area.
Mm.
They had strong Wi-Fi signals so they can watch their videos or whatever it is that they wanted to do, listen to their music.
Mm.
They stopped smoking indoors as much. We had a couple hiccups where too lazy to go outside, too lazy to put on my jacket, whatever, but it decreased a lot. So that's the kind of safe spaces that we wanted to create, right? An opportunity for individuals to engage in the behaviors that they're going to engage anyways, but with a risk management aspect attached to it, and decreasing the risks that the people are engaging in.
Sure. I mean, can you share an example of something where it's not cigarettes? Because I think with cigarettes, it's pretty easy. There's no sort of, they're not walking in after having a cigarette, acting any different, thinking any different, behaving any different beyond maybe having bad breath. What does it look like sort of with alcohol or cannabis, and how do you sort of make that work?
So I'll talk about alcohol for sure.
Mm,
There were instances at the beginning where one of the clients was hiding alcohol bottles all over the place, in the bushes, in the front yard.
sure.
And it wasn't too well hidden. It was pretty obvious, and it didn't look well. It didn't, right. It looked kind of sketchy. So
Mm,
there were concerns about that, and we agreed. There are concerns with just leaving open bottles of alcohol out in the public
mm,
where any child
mm,
can pick it up. So
mm,
what we had, what Catherine was really good at advocating for this. we requested for them to provide a safe space for this because they couldn't bring it into the home either, right? It was an alcohol-free space. So we provided them with kind of this drop box where it was locked, it was secured. The client had the key, the resident had the key, and the staff had the key, and that was it. So the client could go, pick up their alcohol, use it outside, again, in a safe space. And when they were done with it, put it back in their lockbox and go in. Now, we did set some parameters and some limits, right? You can't drink a whole 2-6 in a day. So let's focus on how much safe alcohol consumption is, right? Portioning.
Mm,
We worked through that, but then we also provided them an opportunity to store their alcohol. So if they wanted, different types of alcohol every day, they had an opportunity to have those variety in a place that was safe and in a place that wasn't controlled by us. So in providing it, we were just giving them an opportunity to store things safely, um, because they were already doing it anyways. Except it was dangerous to the community because any,
of course.
10, 12, 15-year-old could have picked up one of those bottles and started drinking, right? So
Yeah.
we
Yeah, that
just
makes
created
sense.
a little safe area for them to store their belongings.
All right, might as well go for the last one. So how do you deal with cannabis? Because I think with alcohol, as long as you're providing an education, like you said, they're not pounding back a 2-6er, they can probably have a drink and to come back in, and again, still be behaving relatively the same way, depending on sort of the individual. But with cannabis, unless it's sort of CBD for pain, cannabis usually has an immediate sort of effect on a person's the perceptual abilities, behavior, and so on. And so what did that look like?
That one is, of course, the hardest.
Yeah.
And what we really did in that point is like remind them, look, all teenagers engage in cannabis use. People can buy legally and it's safe. So again, we set some parameters.
Mm-hmm.
As you purchase your own cannabis safely, you could engage in specific locations that we had outlined, and storage became the same as kind of alcohol, where there was a space outside of the home for people to lock up their stuff, keep it safe. Nobody knew about it, right, in use. And staff indoors were really coached to look out for signs of escalation due to cannabis use, either lack of cannabis use or too much cannabis use, and then respond effectively. So all our crisis management plans outline steps to manage behaviors that may come up either because they're under the influence or just because they're upset. So we kind of
Really
follow a
cool.
similar pathway through all of those situations
Mm.
and kind of help de-escalate. At that point, if they're in the home and they're tripping out, it's better for
Mm-hmm.
them tripping out in the home than it is for them to be
Mm-hmm.
in the
Mm-hmm.
community. So it's really about risk management, decreasing danger to the client, and just kind
Mm-hmm.
of letting the effects of the marijuana wear out while keeping them safe. That's kind of the best you can do in those situations, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
nothing you can really do otherwise.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that really makes a lot of sense. I really like that. That's a cool approach, and I mean, it aligns well with sort of really anything else. I mean, it could be the effects of medication. It could be the effects of lack of sleep. It could be the effects of, any number of setting events in the environment. It could be the effects of anxiety. It's just
100%.
responding and in the right kind of way. So you're not escalating things. I love that. Okay. Let's slide over to some of your ACT work, maybe outside of sort of with, like you said, with folks that are kind of maybe have less support needs, higher skills. How do you provide those services, and how do people access them, and sort of what gets folks coming to you looking for these services versus going to sort of what we might think is sort of the traditional approach of a counselor or psychiatrist or psychologist or what?
I think the difference between, the acceptance and commitment training that I do and the acceptance and commitment therapy that a psychotherapist or psychologist do is that um, our focus is really on the skill building piece. So yes, we build a psychological flexibility that lead to behavior change that, the others do as well, but we do it in a hands-on way, the way that psychologists or psychotherapists may have a harder time doing, right?
Mm,
So whereas psychologists or psychotherapists may have like 1 hour sessions, we may do the same processes across a 2 or 3 hour session or a 1.5 hour session. So it really gives us more time and a
mm,
little bit more freedom to be more hands-on with this stuff, right? And we've been able to work with clients that are engaging in these behaviors, or that need this support across ages, across domains.
mm,
And we really, again, it all starts with the ACT matrix, right? That's our assessment protocol.
Hmm.
That's really our assessment protocol there. And, when you're working through ACT, it's a really abstract process. The thought of diffusion is really abstract. Separate yourself from your thoughts. Great. We understand it. But for somebody who has, some language barriers, that's a really hard thing to adapt to or to understand. So within our practice, we create more concrete examples and practice those in the moment, in the situations where they get difficult.
Hmm.
So to help with diffusion, we may do exercises. And it's like, okay, look, your brain will always tell you to quit. So let's really work on pushing your brain past that I want to quit thought. So
Hmm.
let's do squats, air squats. And when your brain says your legs hurt, stop. I want you to tell your brain, thanks for that thought. Do one more squat and then stop. And then
Hmm.
it got to the point where it's like, look, my brain has told me to do something and I didn't necessarily have to do it, right? I didn't necessarily have to listen. Yes, I was still hurting. Yes, it was still uncomfortable, but I got past that and it did better than I thought I could do. So we've really been able to incorporate that hands-on stuff. Same thing with clients who, for example, we had clients who've had difficulty with completing self-help skills for whatever reason, and they understood that it wasn't the best approach for them. Their values didn't align with those things. And through being like, okay, whenever you're about to do the thing, your brain's going to tell you not to do it.
Hmm.
Uh, and I want you to thank your brain for the thought, or I want you to
Hmm.
say, awesome, I'm thinking it, and then just go for it and do it. Right? Making things more concrete, reinforcing instances of target behaviors that we want to see increase, or catch and prompt those instances of behavior that we want to reduce or change.
Hmm.
The ABA application of it kind of remained the same as any other programming that we were doing,
Hmm.
but the way we did it was by using things like the ACT matrix as a skill assessment. So we approach it the same as you would approach any skill within the VB or the EFL, the Essentials for Living, or any of those other skill assessments. And we use the matrix to tell us where the psychological flexibility questionnaires, whatever it is you were using to assess. We
Hmm.
really use that to identify deficits in skills, target
Hmm.
those skills to be increased, and build skills repertoires from there.
Can you walk me through maybe a case example of how you would use the matrix to assess skills?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a few. So I had a client currently that I'm working
Hmm.
with who, when we just
Hmm.
started, had a really hard time completing self-care routines, right? They were avoiding showering. They didn't want to shower. And the reason why they didn't want to shower was because the shower felt really uncomfortable. It was a sensory thing. They didn't like the way the water felt, whatever that was. So did not talk about showering. We talked about values. What's important to you, right? And values were independence. Values were self-determination. Values were, perception, self-management
Hmm.
and safety, right?
Hmm.
And then we talked about then we started to focus on showering. Okay, so when it's about to shower, what thoughts come up? This is going to be so
Hmm.
uncomfortable. I'm going to be so cold when I get out. It's going to take so long to do. I'd rather watch a video. All those thoughts were popping up, right?
Hmm.
And then it was like, okay, so when those thoughts pop up, what do you do? That takes you away from your values, right? Well, I don't shower. How does that impact your values? Well, you know, I don't smell great, so I can't really go out into the community. And it's not the healthiest thing for me because I also have a skin condition,
Hmm.
right? So all of these things started piling up. And then it was, okay, so what would a goal for you be? And that went in the last quadrant. And it was like, I'd like to shower once every 2 weeks. Great. That's a great place to
Hmm.
start and to shape up from, right?
Hmm.
I don't need the ultimate goal. I just need the next step. So we started to talk about why is it important to shower? Started talking about, what's valuable to them. And we started to talk about the diffusion strategies to help them get closer to their values so that they
Yeah.
felt comfortable going out into the community without knowing that they smelled or with knowing that they didn't smell. Sorry. So at first it was just like, I got to go out to the bank for whatever reason. So I got to shower the day that I'm going to the bank. Great. That's a great place to start. And then we started talking about how the perception of showering was similar or equal to the actual act of showering,
Hmm.
right? the client started reporting that like the thought of showering was a lot worse than the actual shower. The showering
Mm.
was still uncomfortable. So we're like,
Hmm.
great, now let's talk about diffusion, right? And that's where we started to kind of incorporate the really concrete part of diffusion, where it's like your thoughts say one thing, your experience in the actual event is different. How do they align or do they not align? Plus, increasing the reinforcement quality of doing this thing that really sucks. Because at the end of the day, the values really emphasize the importance of reinforcers. They make
Yeah.
doing hard things more valuable and make the suck of doing hard things suck a little bit less. That's all
Mm. Mm.
engaging in value driven behavior does, right? It's not going to make it easy. It's not going to make it beautiful. And no, but it's going to make it a little more meaningful. So when we started to really engage in those two aspects independently, he started showering every day without us changing the goal, right? So independently, the client started showering every 2 weeks, then once a week, then it was a couple times a week. And it got to the point where they were engaging in showering behaviors daily, even if it wasn't a full shower. Maybe it was just a rinse off, but they were
Mm-hmm.
getting in the water, they were getting in the shower, they were engaging in behavior that was meaningful to them. And then tangible reinforcers started to happen because while they were showering, their skin condition improved. So they were more comfortable. They were less itchy. They were, they were breaking out less. All of these things started happening and the tangible reinforcers started to kind of take over that we also didn't have to incorporate. And all of those also align with values. So now showering has become like an everyday routine for them and something they really look forward to. And I mean that they still don't enjoy the most because it's still uncomfortable with the water and you're still cold when you get out, etc. But we worked through that. I do got to say though, we also put in some antecedent interventions to make exiting the shower easier. So we talked about, getting a bathrobe. So you don't even have to leave the shower. The water can still be running. You grab that, you put it on, then you turn the water off. You stay a little bit warmer. We talked about these different things, heated light bulbs, different things that you can do in the environment to help manage the impact of that experience while also increasing the value of doing this really hard thing based on the reinforcement quality of this really hard thing based on your values. That hasn't been the only thing that we've been working while using with
Mm.
that. Like I've been able to help clients work through verbal behavior that limits their interactions with others. Statements like basketball sucks, baseball's the best sport, if you don't play
Mm.
baseball, you suck.
Mm.
Argumentative or offensive language towards parents or other helpers that really limit social interaction. When you're talking about a teenager who says,
Mm-hmm.
boy, baseball is the one true sport. If you don't play it, you suck.
Mm-hmm.
Well, now you're kind of ostracizing a bunch of people that could be your friends when you're in high school.
Mm-hmm.
We work with clients who avoid difficult situations or have a hard time persisting when a task gets difficult. And that's really common in teenagers and kids, right? So especially kids who lack the skills needed to complete these tasks, whether it's homework, whether it's a self-help task, whatever it is. So using ACT to kind of work through all of that, we've been able to ask the questions like, okay, well, why is it important to you based on your values to be
Mm.
open to other sports? You may not have to, you don't have to play it. You don't have
Mm-hmm.
to enjoy it. You don't have to love it. It doesn't have to be your favorite. But why is it important for you to not tell other people that their sport sucks?
Mm.
Right? Why is it important for you to accept other preferences? Why is it important to think about what we say to our parents before we say it, even when we're
Mm.
really angry? I don't care if
Mm-hmm.
you're angry. You could be angry. You could be really angry.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Why is it important for us to be mindful of the words that come out of our mouths? And why is it important for you to try and persist through these hard things? Right?
Mm-hmm.
All of that has been really shaped our approach and has really changed the way these specific clients engage with their environment. So now our clients are having more friends that don't play basketball. Our clients are enjoying going to hockey games and are enjoying going to other sporting events and are open to it. It may not be their favorite sport, but they're open and they're having fun. They're engaging in they're having more friends. Their social circles are opening up. Their relationships with parents are changing and they're more, they're a better quality interactions. It's not perfect yet.
Awesome.
We're still working through things. They're still teenagers, but it's a little less argumentative, right? People are learning skills. They're working more independently for a longer period of time. On the flip side, we've really been using ACT through parent coaching as well.
I bet.
And that has been, in my opinion, a life changer. Like I said, parent coaching is a really important part of our practice. There's not a lot of funding for adults. We've established that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
ensuring that parents can kind of continue to support on the times that we're not there is crucial for that skill development and the skill maintenance. So when those thoughts of like, I can't do that because if I do that, it's going to trigger my son and my son's going to clobber me. When those thoughts pop up, we've used ACT to be like, this is like, tell us why what's important about your relationship with your son and what's important about, about being a parent to you. And through that, navigate the same pathway that we do with our kids, navigate that pathway to get to goals of maybe I just want to build a little bit more flexibility in my son so that when I say, actually, I have to stop for gas, I don't get my hair pulled in the back seat.
Mm-hmm.
And have them implement these really hard, because we ask parents to do some really hard things. Parents to help keep skills up and asking them to do things that they know have triggered their kids in the past. It's a really hard thing. Of course, we have safety precautions in place. We've taught parents how to manage. We tell parents to identify when they need to bail and that it's okay to bail and change your mind and give in. Like we've done all of that to keep them safe. But we've also empowered them to really try. I always tell parents, right? I don't want you to push people out of their comfort zone. Because when we push people, people get angry.
Yeah.
Well, let's nudge them out of that comfort zone a little bit. Let's nudge them and pull them back, right? Let's tiptoe that line of comfort and then pull them back to safety. The more we do that, the more that safety area continues to grow, right? So through ACT, parents have really gotten comfortable nudging their kids along the way, nudging them to do things a little bit differently and reining them back when they need to. So ACT has, for folks who haven't started using ACT yet, for like parent coaching or staff coaching, they should. They should.
That's awesome. One more ACT question, and then I want to shift gears a bit. Thinking about ACT always seems to kind of start with this values conversation. And I think that's probably a relatively easy conversation to have with staff, maybe to have with parents. But values are pretty, abstract, sometimes, ethereal, philosophical concepts that, not a lot of people think about. How do you have a conversation about values with someone, with someone who, may not even really know what that means?
Yeah. So the way we describe the 6 processes of psychological flexibility, right? We adapt our language, but the basic description that we always give to people about what values are, we equate it to a compass, right? Or a guiding light. These are the things that are important to you, that make life valuable and that make you want to be the person that you want to be. And the most important part is that you can't ever attain them. That you have to continue working on them, that you have to continue building on what you did the day before, because you could have a goal of finishing high school, for example, right? And that's done. It's concrete. We see it. But the value of education is different. In order to be educated, you have to continue learning. You have to be willing to continue to engage in behaviors that lead to education. Reading a book, reading a newspaper, watching documentaries, going to extracurricular learnings, continue education, whatever it is. Education you can't really achieve education. So that's kind of how we describe values to people, right? It's something that guides you and makes you the person that you want to be, but that it kind of is hard to attain. It helps you get to your goals. It helps you get to, these concrete things that you could achieve, but you have to continuously work on them. And the most important part that we tell people is that they're fluid. They could change. They could change day by day. They could change situation by situation. They could change month by month. They could change. And it's okay to change your values. At the core of it, core values typically remain the same, but they can be different in situations. For example, like the value of a parent working with their kid in home, their values there could be a lot different than the values of that same parent working with that same kid in the community or in the car. And we have to learn to adapt and give the person the opportunity to manage all of those values and align with those values in those different environments. So that's kind of how we describe values.
That's great. That makes a lot of sense. Okay, I want to shift gears a bit. You're a pretty busy guy, so you've been running this company for 4 years now. It's grown. You've got a lot of pieces in play there. And, running a company is a full-time job beyond the full-time job. You're also a dad. It sounds like you got a couple kids.
I got 2. Yeah, I got a
2
daughter.
Kids. Yeah, daughter and a son. And how old are they?
I got a 12-year-old daughter and a 1.5-year-old son.
Yeah, so add that to the mess, and you're already, down to probably the 4 hours a night of sleep, and so you're also the president of ONTABA. I guess, why are you doing this to yourself? And tell me a little bit about ONTABA. You've been involved with ONTABA for a lot of years. I met you when you were in a different role. We were both kind of doing more communications. I was working with BCBA. You were with ONTABA in sort of that role. And now you're the president. So why do you do this to yourself? And what is it about ONTABA that's really important to you and sort of connects with your values?
That's a really good question. And absolutely, like I said, I've been in the field since I started my master's in 2015. So that's 10 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And for 6 of those years, I've been on the ONTABA board of
Yeah.
directors. 2 years as a director at large, and I was chair of the Advocacy and Communications Committee
Mm.
and the Educational Advancement Committee. Before that, I was doing some volunteer work with people here and there, not related to ONTABA, but I was still involved in the field. And then
Mm.
um, I had a presentation in my master's class. I heard about ONTABA, couldn't afford registration because, I had a kid, I was paying my master's. So I couldn't afford my membership. And then one year, my mom for Christmas got me a 3-year membership and I was stoked,
Mm. Wow.
right? And that's how I got started. That's how I got started right after I had gotten my BCBA. So it was 2017 that I got my first membership. Got my BCBA for Christmas. I got a 3-year membership. And then I was like, you know what? I want to learn more. I want to do more. I want to be more involved. I was still relatively new to the field. I knew that there was so much more to learn. So I ran to be on the board. Got on. 2 years later, I was like, okay, gonna continue, whatever. And then I was like, you know what? Maybe I can try to be president because
Mm.
I felt like I had learned a lot and I got to meet a lot of really great people doing a lot of really cool things. And I ran for president. And I was president-elect for 2 years. And now I'm the current president with my term coming up to end in November. So that's what we've been doing. And, over the last 6 years, the changes and the growth that ONTABA have gone through have been astronomical. When I joined
Mhm.
the board, we were at like 1,100, 1,200 members. We're currently sitting at like 1,800 members across the
Wow.
province. So that's really big growth for an ABA organization in Canada across the span of 6 years, right?
Mhm.
Um, and we are the biggest ABA organization in Canada. We are one of the biggest in the world. We've been around for decades, right? We celebrated 30 years of being an association a couple of
Mhm.
years ago, and we've been consistently present in Ontario. And we've really worked, especially over the last couple of years. I mean, we've always wanted to bring students in, and we've always wanted to build that membership, but over the last couple of years specifically, we've really been focusing on continuing to grow our association membership from the student side, because those are the ones that are going to continue to drive ONTABA forward in the years to come. So we've been doing a lot of visits to colleges and universities. We've been seeing these students become members and remain members. Like, we started our fall visits to colleges in mid-September, so a couple weeks ago, and we've already seen a growth of 26 student members join.
Wow.
26 isn't that big of a number. But when you're thinking about 26 people that you didn't have before who within a couple of weeks said, this is who I want to be part of,
Mhm.
it's really meaningful. So that's kind of what we've been doing. And we've been doing a lot of work. We've had a lot of events throughout the year. And, I got to thank the board. I got to thank everybody who's been part of that board and all the volunteers that have been part of that, because they've been able to put together conferences, events for students and things like that. We're about to head into ONTABA Con 2025 in November.
Mm.
But last Saturday, the Saturday that just passed, we just finished doing our very first ever Next Gen conference. And that
Mm.
conference was tailored to students,
Wow.
right? We wanted to give students the opportunity to build their presentation skills in a way that they feel safe and comfortable. So we gave them the opportunity to present their work to their peers, to other students, which also then gave the opportunity to students who may be apprehensive of sharing their stuff to see that other people that are in the same education level as them
Mm.
are doing these things.
Mm.
Or maybe they're a little bit older, so now they're getting ideas
Mm.
for the type of work that they want to do. So we've really been doing that a lot. We had our evening for behavior analysis, and we heard from our members that, our work is very GTA centric. And,
Mm.
our conference happens in Toronto every year. We had Evening for Behavior Analysis that was happening in Toronto. Most of our members do live in Toronto, but we also have members in the Ottawa area, and that's like a 3.5 hour drive. We have members in Northern Ontario that could be like a 12-hour drive or a 2-hour flight. We have
Mm-hmm.
members in Southern Ontario that are maybe 2 hours away from us. And if we have a weekday event, it might be up to 3.5 hours, depending on how the 401 is moving, right? That in the Toronto area is horrible. And hearing that feedback this year that just passed, the summer that just passed, we started to take one of our events on the road. And we let our members decide where they wanted us to host this event. So for the first time ever, we hosted this event in Ontario, and that was chosen by our members. Our members voted for London, Ontario to be the host of Evening for Behavior Analysis. And we already have our where that event is happening next summer. I can't disclose where that is, but
Okay.
I think our members are going to be really happy when they hear where that's going to be, because we already know where people are wanting us to go. So we really want to get the feedback, the engagement of our members, and we want to create this two-way conversation that allows us to meet the needs of our 1,800 and growing members, right?
Mm-hmm.
We've had online sessions. We just wrapped up a 3-hour supervision session, three-part supervision sessions, focusing on the changes to supervision based on the legislature after regulation. Right? That was online, so people across the province could access it. We had almost 100 people join those three events. So we've really been able to do a lot of that, and the really cool thing that I like about ONTABA is that ONTABA has been instrumental in doing a lot of things for Ontario.
Mm-hmm.
We were really instrumental in bringing the BACB in the early 2000s. So thank those board members who were on those boards in 2000 and those years that helped bring the BACB and credentialing into Ontario. And for 30 years, we've also been advocating for regulation. So I got to thank all those board members and our founders who started to advocate for that early and saw the importance of that early. And we saw that come to fruition last year. And because I got involved and I was able to be part of this, I've had some really great opportunities and have had some really great people that I wouldn't have been able to have otherwise, right? I got to be part of the process of regulation as a representative to ONTABA.
Mm-hmm.
Did in meetings with the college. I got to provide feedback on documents and bring things back to our members and hear our members' concerns and work through all of that and meet some great people who helped me work and develop my skills, right? I had some really great people that helped me through Act and RFT. I met Jess Kalki, who helped me delve into the sexuality piece of sexual safety, all of that stuff. So it's really opened the doors and opportunities for me to meet a lot of great behavior analysts in Ontario, but I don't think I would have otherwise met if I had stayed within my work bubble. I met great people at work, don't get me wrong. I love the people that I work with. I love the people that I worked with, but this has really expanded my opportunity to engage with other behavior analysts. And it's created some really good memories, some hard, stressful memories, of course, but what's life without a little stress? But I have really fun, after my presidency is done, I think I'll have some really fun memories of my time and love being a member of ONTABA. And, students have asked me when we're doing these student presentations, well, like you, what makes you want to do this? And the reality is that I've fallen in love with ABA to the point where I want to be involved with ABA in every and any capacity. And I want to be part of one of the many, many, many voices that help shape what ABA looks like in Ontario. And it's also giving me the opportunity to meet awesome people outside of Ontario, like you, the rest of the presidents of the other associations, and, hear the cool things that they're doing, support each other. So it's really created this network of people that I don't think otherwise I would have been able to develop. So long way to answer. I do it because I value the work that ONTABA does. I do it because I value, the drive for change and the relationship building opportunities that it creates.
So this all goes back to your mom for getting you this really psychedelic gift for Christmas. I don't think a lot of folks have gotten an ONTABA membership for Christmas. So thanks,
That's
Mom.
it. Thanks, Mom. 2017.
Yeah. Yeah, wonderful. Okay, so your term and it comes to a close this November, and I assume that's sort of timed with this year's conference. So tell me a little bit about ONTABA 2025. What's happening?
All right, the conference. So my term is actually done on the night of November 6th at our annual general meeting. Our conference this year is happening November 6th and 7th at the Metro Toronto Convention Centre. If you're in Toronto, join us in person. If you're not in Toronto, join us anyways, because all of our rooms are fully streamed. They're all
Wow.
online. Through Behavior Live, you can access every single one of us.
Hmm.
Plus, if speakers give us permission, we'll record their sessions. And we'll let
Hmm.
our attendees who are in person or virtual know which sessions will be recorded.
Hmm.
And then they have access to all of those videos for a month after the conference. So
Right.
if you're in person, you can only see one talk at a time. And with our breakouts, we sometimes have 3 or 4 breakouts at the same time.
Mm,
So you watch the sessions that you want in person, and then you can go back and same thing if you're virtual. Then you go back and watch the other ones and continue to accrue your CEUs.
perfect.
And that makes it close to 20 CEUs that we have available at the company. So half of what you need to renew your BCBA credential, right?
Hmm.
And this year, we're super excited. Our speakers this year, we have Mark Lenovas as a Canadian speaker.
Mm,
We have Ryan O'Donnell, or Ryan O.
mm.
He'll be one of our speakers. Holly Gover, who's attached with FDF, will be one of our speakers. And we have Ali Kazemi coming to speak with.
Wow.
So
Wow.
that's
Huge
our
lineup.
4 lineups. Yeah, and we're
Yeah.
super excited to have them out. But that's not going to take away from the 14 breakout sessions that we have available throughout
Mm-hmm.
the 2 days. Ignites are coming back this year, and Ignites give people a cool opportunity to share something different.
Mm.
So we have about an hour worth of Ignites happening. We have vendors offering job opportunities, offering discounts, etc. We have a social event. There's really a lot to do, uh, especially if you're in person. And I think this year you're going to be coming and joining us.
That's right. Yeah, I'm going to join you folks for the first time ever. I'm super excited to go to the biggest ABA conference in Canada.
And we're super excited to have you. And I think there's a little rumor going around that we're going to have a live recording of an episode for your podcast.
Yeah, this is Behavior Speak all weekend long. So we're going to be spending some time doing a live recording, some sort of live panel
Yeah.
on one of the days, and so that's going to be really that'll be a first for Behavior Speak, a live episode. Hopefully live streaming if we can pull it off.
Absolutely.
Certainly through ONTABA, but hopefully through my own channels as well. And then also I'm going to be there all weekend long, just setting up shop and doing live interviews with all the attendees that want to come see me, with speakers, with organizers. Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun.
We're excited. And we're always looking at ways that we could improve member experience to whatever events that we do. So I think this will really give a different experience to people who are attending in person, because they might hear their question in your podcast for the recording that we do, where, they will remember and they'll be able to have this kind of experience, or they might hear their voices in one of the podcasts based on what you've, interviewed them on in the hallways or whatever. So we're super excited to have our members be engaged, and even non-members who want to join. Registration is still open. If you Google ONTABACon 2025 Behavior Live, you'll be able to find us and register. We're still open. There's group registration discounts. Again, you could register either in person or virtual. So even if you are, uh, in another country, you're able to join. Last year, we had people join us from Abu Dhabi and Dubai. So we've had the opportunity to really kind of expand our reach, and we hope to continue to expand that reach. And the cool thing is that, let's say you can take 2 days off of work, because a lot of people can't, right? Let's say you can take 2 days off of work. You can really tailor your attendance live, whether that is recording or in person, what you want to see and who you want to see speak, because you're going to have the opportunity to watch those recordings over the weekend. So
That's
you don't
amazing.
have 2 days off, right? So it's really flexible. It's a cool opportunity. We're really excited to have lots of people show up like we have every year, and we want to continue to grow. So yeah, we're hoping to see.
I really love that you have that option, because there's so many times that I go to a conference and they have breakout rooms, especially local conferences like a BCABA, where I go, it's all my friends that are presenting, but there's only a couple of rooms I can go to. I remember some years I would be sort of standing in the hallway and kind of, okay, 20 minutes left, I'm going to dart down to the other room and catch a little bit of the other guy, just so I can, support folks and kind of do all those things. But you're always going to miss out, and so having that recording opportunity, I think, is brilliant. And Behavior Live is a great forum to do that with.
Absolutely, and you don't have to pick and choose, right? You can watch all of them at different times. I think that's really changed our conference experience, and we've been really excited to work with Behavior Live and give our members that opportunity to do that as well. And take breaks when they need to, knowing that they won't miss out on anything, just create accessibility.
Yeah. And just I want to shout out again. I'm going to be there all weekend long. I'm going to have microphone in hand, both at the tables, also moving around, hopefully at the social event as well. And so, anyone that's sort of ever wanted an opportunity to try being on a podcast, you're going to get that chance, because I'd love to chat with you. And hopefully for some other folks, I'm hoping we can kind of sit down, have a meeting, and set up a future episode so we can do some interviewing. As anyone who's got something cool to talk about, come find me, and hopefully we can set something up, and that'd be really cool. And I really appreciate that ONTABA is offering a bit of a discount on registration for our listeners using the code BXSpeak10. You can get a 10% discount off registration, both live and virtual, right, Jamie?
Correct. Any type of registration that you want, you get that 10% discount. And we just really wanted to give your listeners an opportunity to meet you in person if they're coming in person and be part of your podcast.
I'm stoked, and I'm super humbled and grateful that you're having me. And I was born in Ontario. I've got a lot of family down there, so I'm looking forward to connecting with those folks. But it'll be really nice to finally connect with some of the professionals that I've gotten to know over the past few years. With you, that we met through ONTABA, BCBA connections, and then with all the past guests that I've had on, and all the great listeners from Ontario that have been so supportive of me. I'm looking forward to meeting you all in person. I'm really excited about it. It's going to be great.
I agree.
Yeah.
We're super excited to have you and to see how this partnership evolves.
So for registration, how do folks register? Where do they go? Where can we get more information about the conference?
So if you want to register for the conference, you could either go to ontaba.org. In the ribbon, you'll see events. You'll see ONTABACon. Click there. It'll take you to Behavior Live. Otherwise, you can just Google ONTABACon 2025 Behavior Live, and it'll take you there. Registration is really quick and easy. You can pay with a credit card. It'll keep moving. I'll also send you the link so you can put it in your show notes or
Perfect.
Whatever it is that you want to do. But it's super easy. If you haven't attended a conference through Behavior Live, the process of registering is super easy. And the cool thing is that they have an app, so you can watch the whole thing from your phone. You can create your own schedule of what you want to show up, right? So it's really cool, really accessible. Yeah, that's where you'll find Behavior Live.
And you mentioned you have folks like from all over the world coming to this thing. Do folks need to be members to attend the conference, or is that a...
No, definitely not. It's open to the public, right? You register, whoever wants to register. The thing is, if you're a member, you get a big break financially, right? You don't have to pay extra for your CEUs, and you get a discounted price for attending the conference, regardless of whether it's live or in person. The cost for both live and in person is the same because you get access to the same amount of CEUs, right? And the same amount of talks. So anybody can register, members or not members. If you want to save yourself a couple bucks, buy yourself a 1-year membership, affiliate, student, full voting, whatever it is that you qualify for or that you want to pay. And you get a further discount to that. Absolutely. But anybody could join.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like you've got a lot of other cool events kind of happening through the year. So maybe joining ONTABA is the way to go and take advantage of all the benefits. Yeah.
And we have a lot of events that are member exclusive, right? Last year we had a lot of opportunities for members to meet with us directly and tell us their concerns about regulation or their questions about regulation before regulation kicked in. And that really gave us the opportunity to go back to the college. And that was open only to members, nobody outside of it. And we focused on students and we focused on clinicians. Nobody else could join those. We've had a lot of member-specific giveaways, right? Last year, we gave a conference ticket. We gave a conference ticket out and a room for lodging at the conference. So that was only open to members. We're about to start doing more giveaways now. Some are open just to members. Some are open to the public. But you get more information directly to your inbox. Being a member really just makes it a little more streamlined. It gives you access to free CEUs on all of our events, discounted prices for all of our events if they're paid, or free access to our events if they're not. But yeah, I agree. It's the way to go. And it'll give you the opportunity to meet awesome people.
Yeah, well, I'm stoked to meet a whole bunch of awesome people this year, and really excited to be there. Thanks again for Jamie for coming on the podcast. Great to learn about you, your company, your role at ONTABA, all the cool things happened at the conference. This was a really fun chat.
Thanks for having me, Ben. Had a lot of fun.
Awesome. The last secret word is president. Don't forget to register for ONTABACon 2025 by going to ontaba.org and entering the code BXSpeak10 for 10% off your registration. To get yourself hyped up for the conference, check out these episodes featuring alumni and professors from Brock University's Master of Applied Disability Studies program. Episode 13, Behavior Analysis and Psychotropic Medication with Dr. Allison Cox. Episode 20, Consulting in Group Homes Using ACT with Monica Peters. Episode 27, Translational Research, DeGeorge Syndrome, and a Little Dash of Meta-Contingencies with Dr. Val Saney. Episode 34, ADHD and ODD with Amelia Bowler. And of course, episode 234 with Ria Vuxen, who graduated from Brock's very first cohort. You can find us on Instagram and TikTok and subscribe to our YouTube page at Behaviour Speak. And if you enjoyed this episode, please leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify.